When Jay-Z told DMX, "You can't sell without hooks," what happened in 4 minutes changed hip-hop forever. New York City, Def Jam Records headquarters. March. Earl Simmons stood in the hallway outside Studio B on the 8th floor of 825 8th Avenue, trying to convince himself he belonged there. His palms were sweating. Not from fear. DMX didn't do fear, couldn't afford fear, had learned at age 5 that fear got you hurt worse than whatever you were afraid of. But from something closer to electrical charge. Pure kinetic energy, looking for somewhere to explode. He was 27 years old, had been rapping since he was 13, had been grinding for 14 years. Battles in parking lots and street corners, showcases where industry people checked their watches. After 30 seconds, demos that went nowhere because program directors said his voice was too harsh and unmarketable. Labels that passed on him with polite rejection letters that all said the same thing in different ways. Not commercial enough, too aggressive, won't work on radio, doesn't fit our current roster. Thanks but no thanks, good luck with your future endeavor. Columbia Records had dropped him after one single in Born Loser, they'd called it. The title was prophetic in the worst way. The song went nowhere. Radio wouldn't touch it. The streets barely notice. And Columbia's response was swift and merciless. Contract terminated. Good luck, don't call us. That failure had lived inside Earl for 5 years now. A constant whisper that maybe the industry was right. Maybe he wasn't good enough. Maybe his voice, the growl that came from damaged vocal cords and too many years of screaming into the void, was just too much for audiences to handle. The whole industry had counted him out. Said he'd never make it. Said his voice was too harsh. His content too real. His energy too violent for radio. Said suburban white kids, the demographic that made or broke rap careers in 1998, said program directors would never risk their jobs playing something so unpolished, so raw, so uncompromisingly street. But Def Jam had taken a chance. Layor Cohen, the label president, a white guy from Israel who somehow understood hip-hop better than most people born in it, had believed in him. And Irv Gotti, the A&R who'd been trying to get Earl signed for years, who'd seen something in him when everyone else saw a liability, had finally made it happen. They'd offered him a deal, not a great deal, the advance was modest, the points were weighted toward the label, but a deal, a chance, maybe his last one. And now 2 months from releasing his debut album It's Dark and Hell is Hot, standing in this hallway with the thick carpeting and the gold records on the walls, and the implicit pressure to justify everyone's faith in him, he was about to prove he deserved the chance they'd given him. The problem was, Jay-Z was in that studio, and Jay-Z had opinions. Sean Carter, Jay-Z to the world, Hov to his friends, the man everyone in hip-hop was either studying or trying to surpass, was 33 years old and arguably the hottest rapper in the game. His album In My Lifetime had gone platinum 6 months ago. His next album, Balju Hard Knock Life, was coming in December and everyone in the building knew it was going to be massive. Radio loved him. MTV loved him. White suburban audiences who'd been scared of hip-hop after Biggie and Tupac got killed were starting to love him because he felt safe, sophisticated, aspirational rather than threatening. He'd figured out the formula, street credibility mixed with commercial accessibility. Hard enough for the hood to respect him, smooth enough for suburban teenagers to play him in their parents' cars, lyrics sharp enough to impress purists who cared about wordplay and metaphor. Hooks catchy enough for pop charts and graduation parties and bar mitzvahs. He could code switch between boardrooms and street corners, could wear an expensive suit to a label meeting and still command respect in Brooklyn, could build a business empire while maintaining his reputation as a real rapper. He was everything the industry wanted rap to become in the post-Biggie, post-Tupac era: professional, profitable, scalable, safe enough for corporate sponsors, real enough for the culture, the perfect bridge between the streets and the suburbs. And he thought DMX was making a mistake. The door to Studio B was slightly open, just a crack, but it was enough. DMX could hear voices inside, multiple voices layered over each other in conversation. Irv Gotti, His champion at Def Jam, the A&R who'd fought to sign him when everyone else said he was too risky, was in. DMX recognized his voice immediately. The Queen's accent, the defensive tone he got when he was protecting one of his artists, probably Layor too. Earl could imagine him standing by the window where he always stood during studio sessions, arms crossed, watching everything with those calculating eyes that saw artists as investments, as portfolios, as numbers on quarterly reports. Maybe Swizz Beatz was in there too. The young producer who'd been making beats for DMX. The 19-year-old kid from the Bronx with the crazy energy who understood Earl's vision instinctively, who could translate the chaos in Earl's head into organized sound. Swizz had become his secret weapon, his translator, the person who could take the raw emotion and turn it into tracks that hit like weapons. And definitely Jay-Z. DMX could hear his voice clearly through the crack in the door, that distinct Brooklyn cadence, casual and confident, the voice of someone who knew he was right and didn't need to raise his volume to prove it. I'm telling you, you need hooks. Radio isn't going to play 3 minutes of aggressive rapping with no melody. You need something catchy, something people can sing along with, something that sticks in their head when they walk away from the radio. Irv's voice responded, defensive and sharp. His music isn't meant for radio. That's the whole point. It's meant to be raw, meant to be We're not trying to make Puff Daddy records here. Raw doesn't sell albums, Jay-Z said, not dismissive, not condescending, matter of fact, like he was explaining basic mathematics to someone who'd gotten the equation wrong. Raw gets you respect in the streets, gets you credibility with purists, but we're trying to build careers here, not just reputations. We're trying to move units. You want to go platinum? You need hooks, you need structure, you need songs, not just verses. You need something for radio to grab onto. DMX's jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles went white. The voice in his head, the one he'd later call X, the angry one, the protector, the part of him that had been forged in violence and trauma and couldn't be told what to do without feeling like he was being attacked. That voice was screaming so loud it was almost physical. Who the fuck does he think he is? He doesn't know me, doesn't know where I come from, doesn't know that I slept in abandoned buildings in Yonkers when I was 15, doesn't know that my mother beat me so bad I lost teeth, doesn't know that my mentor Reddy Ron laced my first blunt with crack when I was 14 and turned me into an addict before I even understood what addiction was, doesn't know what my music means to people, doesn't know that raw is all I got, that truth is all that if I start compromising, start adding hooks and melodies and radio-friendly bullshit just to sell records, I lose the only thing that makes me different. I become just another rapper trying to sound like everyone else. But there was another voice too, smaller, quieter, the Earl voice, the scared kid from Yonkers who'd slept in Salvation Army clothing bins, the one who'd been homeless, and hungry, and invisible for so long he'd started to believe maybe he was supposed to be invisible. The one who'd been dropped by Columbia and told by the industry that he wasn't good enough. The one who'd failed so many times he'd started believing maybe failure was his destiny. What if he's right? What if I'm making a mistake? What if my album comes out in May and nobody buys it because I refuse to play the game? What if I stay true to myself and stay broke? What if being real means being unemployed? What if authenticity is just another word for commercial suicide? What if I'm so busy being an artist that I forget to be a professional? What if Jay-Z knows something I don't? He's already platinum. He's already proven himself. Maybe I should listen. The two voices warred inside him. X screaming for defiance, Earl whispering doubts. It was the story of his life. Really, the eternal battle between the part of him that wanted to fight everything, and the part of him that just wanted to survive, between the warrior and the wounded child. DMX pushed the door open and walked in before he could talk himself out of it. The studio was crowded, not physically, it was a big room, professionally designed with acoustic panels on the walls and expensive equipment everywhere. But energetically, too many strong personalities in one space, too many competing visions for what hip-hop should be. Irv Gotti sat at the mixing board, wearing his usual Ruff Ryders chain, the motorcycle logo glinting under the studio lights, and a Yankees cap pulled low. He looked up when Earl entered, relief flooding his face, like he'd been holding the fort against superior forces, and reinforcements had finally arrived. Swizz Beatz was in the corner by the keyboards, young and eager, only 19 but already producing heat that had the whole industry paying attention. His energy was pure enthusiasm untainted by cynicism or calculation. He still believed music could change the world because he hadn't been in the game long enough to have that belief beaten out of him. Leor Cohen stood by the window exactly where DMX had predicted, arms crossed, watching the room with the calculating eyes of someone who saw artists as investments, as portfolios, as risk-reward calculations on a spreadsheet. He was brilliant at his job. Everyone said so. But sometimes his brilliance felt cold, like he could reduce your soul to quarterly projection. And Jay-Z sat on the leather couch against the far wall, perfectly relaxed, wearing an expensive button-down that probably cost more than Earl had spent on clothes in the last year, and a Rolex that definitely cost more than DMX had made in his entire life up to this point. He looked up when DMX entered. No hostility in his eyes, no superiority, just acknowledgement. One artist seeing another, one peer recognizing another, even if one peer had made it and the other was still climbing. Jay-Z said, nodding. His voice was warm, welcoming. Yo, I was just telling Irv. I heard you, DMX said. His voice was gravel, always had been, scarred by years of smoking, screaming, surviving. The voice that radio programmers said was too harsh, the voice that Columbia Records had rejected, the voice that was either going to make him a star or confirm everyone's doubts. You think I need hooks? I think you need to be strategic. The music's dope, nobody's questioning that. Your energy's crazy, your lyrics are real, you've got something special. But radio programmers, they need something to grab onto. They need a hook they can tease in commercials, a chorus they can play in the first 30 seconds to hook listeners, before they change the station. 3 minutes of barking and aggressive rapping. They don't know what to do with that. It scares them, and scared program directors don't put songs in rotation. Radio programmers can suck my dick. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when someone says something that can't be unsaid. Swizz looked up from his keyboards, eyes. Leor turned from the window, face unreadable. Irv put his head in his hands, either because he agreed with DMX, or because he knew this confrontation was inevitable, and was dreading watching it play out. Jay-Z didn't react immediately, didn't get defensive or offended or angry, just studied DMX for a moment with those sharp eyes, not judging, assessing, like a chess player looking at the board 3 moves ahead, trying to understand not just what DMX was saying but what he meant, what he feared, what he was protecting. That's cool, Jay-Z said finally. His voice was still calm, still measured. You can say fuck radio, that's your choice. But then what? What's the end game? You sell 50,000 copies to hardcore fans, and that's it. You become an underground legend respected by purists but broke. Or do you want to be a star? Because the difference between those two things, between underground respect and commercial success, is hooks, is structure, is understanding that music is business, that you can be an artist and a businessman, that those two things don't have to contradict each other. Music is truth, DMX said. His voice was rising now, the emotion leaking through. Music is pain, music is me standing in front of a microphone and bleeding out everything that's inside me so people who hurt like I hurt know they're not alone. So kids who slept in abandoned buildings, like I did, have someone who understands. So addicts who got tricked into their first hit like I did have a voice that speaks their language. I start calculating, start thinking about what programmers want, start worrying about sales numbers and DMX. I lose that. I lose the only thing that matters. Jay-Z leaned back on the couch, processing. You can do both. I did both. Look at what I'm doing right now. The next album, the one dropping in December, there's a song on there sampling Hard Knock Life from Annie, from a Broadway musical. That's a hook from a show that white suburban kids grew up with. Their parents took them to see it when they were 8 years old. That familiarity, that nostalgia, that's going to be the biggest rap song of the year. He paused, letting that sink in. But the verses are still street, still real, still me talking about growing up in Marcy projects, about selling drugs, about the struggle. I didn't compromise. I didn't go soft. I just understood the game. I found a way to use a Broadway musical to make people listen to street stories. That's strategy. That's intelligence. And it works. I don't play games. Then you're going to lose. Because this whole industry is a game with rules. Promotion is a game. Distribution is a game. Radio is a game. MTV is a game. Retail is a game. The labels, the programmers, the journalists, the retailers, all of them are playing a game. And the people who win are the people who learn the rules and figure out how to work inside them without selling their soul. The people who lose are the people who think being an artist means ignoring business. You can be pure and broke, or you can be strategic and successful. That's the choice. DMX felt the anger rising, hot and familiar. The X part of him wanted to walk over there and put his hands on Jay-Z, not violently. Well, maybe violently, but just to make him understand through physical pressure what words apparently couldn't convey. That not everyone could be Jay-Z, that not everyone had his background, his education, his natural gift for code switching between street and boardroom. That not everyone could wear a suit and maintain street credibility. That some people only had one gear, raw truth. And if that wasn't enough, then fuck it. It wasn't enough. But Earl, the scared kid, the one who'd been hungry too many times, who'd failed too many times, who'd learned that pride was a luxury only successful people could afford. Earl was calculating, looking at Jay-Z's Rolex, probably $30,000 on his, looking at Lior's expensive Italian suit, looking at the platinum plaques on the wall, looking at all the physical evidence of what success looked like, what compromise could buy you, looking at everything DMX didn't have and might never have if he didn't listen to people who'd already figured it out. The silence stretched. Everyone in the room was watching, waiting to see which version of Earl Simmons would win this internal battle. The warrior or the survivor, the artist or the careerist. What do you think I should do? DMX asked finally. The question came out harder than he meant it to. Defensive, aggressive, like he was daring Jay-Z to say something stupid so he'd have an excuse to stop listening, to dismiss him, to go back to being certain in his own vision, instead of contaminated by doubt. Jay-Z shrugged, the gesture casual but the answer clearly thought through. Take the record Swizz played me last week, the one you're calling Ruff Ryders Anthem. That beat is crazy, the energy is insane, your delivery is unlike anything on the radio right now. It's hard, it's aggressive, it's going to make people pay attention, but it needs a hook, needs something in the chorus that people can chant, can remember, can make their own. Right now it's just verses, just you going off for 3 minutes, which is dope, don't get me wrong, but it's not a single. A single needs structure, needs something that works in the first 15 seconds, to grab people before they change the station. Swizz spoke up from the corner, his young voice careful, not wanting to take sides but wanting to contribute. I mean that stop, drop, shut 'em down, open up shop part that X does that could be a hook. That's catchy. We could make that a chant, build the whole song around it, make it the anchor instead of just another bar. Exactly, Jay-Z said, pointing at Swizz. That's what I'm talking about. You don't have to add fake shit. You don't have to compromise the essence of what makes you special. You don't have to go soft or commercial or radio friendly in a way that betrays who you are. You just take what's already there, the pieces that are naturally catchy, naturally memorable, and you structure them. You present them in a way that works on radio. That's not selling out. That's being smart. DMX looked at Swizz, at Irv, at Lior. Everyone was watching him, waiting to see if he'd listen, if he'd take advice from someone who'd already made it, if he'd be smart or stubborn, if he'd choose strategy or purity, if he'd play the game or refuse to play at all. Let me hear the beat, DMX said. Swizz's face lit up. He turned to his keyboard setup, fingers moving across the equipment with practiced ease, and then those iconic keys came through the speakers, that menacing loop, the energy that would later become synonymous with Ruff Ryders, with a whole era of hip-hop, with a sound that defined a moment. DMX closed his eyes, let the beat wash over him, let it settle into his bones, into his nervous system, into the place where music lived before it became words. He could feel the rhythm in his chest, could feel his heart starting to synchronize with it, could feel X, the angry protector, starting to wake up, starting to have something to say. He could feel the song could feel exactly what it needed to be, and it wasn't what Jay-Z was describing. It wasn't structured for radio. It wasn't calculated for program directors. It wasn't designed to fit between R&B songs and pop rap crossovers. It was rage. It was power. It was the sound of everyone who'd ever been counted out. Everyone who'd ever been told they weren't good enough. Everyone who'd ever had to fight just to survive. It was all of that crystallized into 3.5 minutes of pure aggression. It was the sound of Yonkers, the sound of abandoned buildings and Salvation Army bins and hunger that made you steal, the sound of trauma turned into triumph, the sound of refusing to die, and it didn't need a hook, at least not the kind of hook Jay-Z was talking about. It needed to be exactly what it was. Unapologetic. Uncompromising. DMX opened his eyes. The beat was still playing. Looping. Waiting for him. Play it again. Swizz restarted the track. DMX walked toward the vocal booth. Moving with purpose now. The decision made. Irv called after him from the mixing board. X. Where you going? We haven't worked out the structure yet. We haven't. I'm going to record. Record what? We haven't talked about what you're doing. The format. I'm going to show him what I mean. DMX looked back at Jay-Z. Eye contact direct and challenging. You got 4 minutes. Jay-Z smiled, not condescending, not dismissive, genuinely curious, interested to see what would happen. Yeah, I got 4 minutes. Then watch, and listen, and tell me if this needs a hook. DMX stepped into the vocal booth. The space was small, intimate, padded with acoustic foam, just him and a microphone. And the weight of everything riding on this moment. Swizz hit the talkback button. His voice coming through the headphones. You want me to run the beat from the top? Yeah, and don't stop it. I'm going straight through. One take. You're not going to write anything. You don't want time to... I don't write. Never have. Writing makes it too calculated. I feel. The booth door closed with a soft click. DMX put on the headphones. The leather pads, settling over his ears. The world narrowed to just him and the beat. Everything else disappeared. Jay-Z on the couch, with his opinions and his Rolex. Irv at the board with his concerns about radio. Lior watching with his spreadsheet eyes. The pressure of the album release. The fear of failure. The weight of being counted out. His whole life. The knowledge that this might be his last chance. That if this album failed, he'd be back in Yonkers with nothing to show for 14 years of grinding. Except rejection letters. And broken dream. All of it dissolved. There was just the beat and the rage. And the truth. Swizz hit play in the control room. The keys came in. That menacing loop. That aggressive bounce. That sound that felt like a challenge. Like a threat. Like a promise of violence. Barely contained. And DMX opened his mouth. And let everything pour out. No hook. No structure. No radio-friendly packaging. No calculation or strategy, or thought about what program directors wanted, or what suburban teenagers could handle. Just raw, unfiltered aggression. His voice tore through the speakers, like a weapon, like something that couldn't be contained, or controlled, or commercialized, or made safe for mass consumption. The barking ad-lib, his signature, the thing everyone said was too weird for mainstream. The thing that made him sound less like a rapper, and more like something feral and dangerous, came naturally, organically, as part of the flow instead of a gimmick or a In the control room, everyone leaned forward, unconsciously, drawn in by what was happening. Irv's mouth opened slightly, his usual cynical expression replaced by something like awe. Swizz was nodding, hypnotized, his whole body moving with the rhythm. Even Lior, who'd seen everything, who'd worked with everyone from Run DMC, to LL Cool J, to every major rapper of the last decade, looked impressed, his arms uncrossed. He stepped closer to the speakers, and Jay-Z sat completely still, watching through the glass, listening, absorbing what was happening in that booth, because what DMX was doing wasn't just rapping, it was exorcism, it was therapy, it was transformation of pain into power. Every line hit like a punch, every bar carried the weight of lived experience, of hunger and homelessness, and addiction and trauma. There was no calculation, no strategy, no thought about market research, or focus groups, or what the kids in Kansas wanted to hear, just truth delivered with such force and conviction that it became undeniable, just reality so raw that it demanded to be heard. 4 minutes later, the beat ended. DMX took off the headphones and walked out of the booth. His shirt was soaked with sweat despite the air conditioning. His hands were still shaking from the adrenaline, from the rush of letting everything out. He looked at Jay-Z, chest heaving, waiting for the verdict. "That's what I mean," DMX said, his voice still rough from the performance. "That's what my music is. That's what it has to be. And if it doesn't work on radio, if it doesn't sell, if it doesn't make me rich, or famous, or successful by industry standards, I can live with that. What I can't live with is making music that's a lie, that's calculated, that's designed to please people, instead of to be true." Jay-Z didn't respond immediately, just sat there, processing what he'd heard. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of equipment. Then he stood up, walked over to DMX slowly, and did something unexpected. He extended his hand for a shake. "You're right," Jay-Z said. "I'm wrong." DMX took his hand. They shook. The room was silent, everyone absorbing what had just happened. Jay-Z, the biggest rapper in the game, the man who'd figured out the formula, the person everyone looked to for advice, admitting he was wrong, reversing his position completely. "What you just did," Jay-Z continued, his voice serious and genuine, "that's not what I do. That's not my lane. I make songs, structured shit, that works on radio, that fits into formats, that programmers can understand. But what you do, that's different. That's something else entirely. That's not music for radio. That's music for people who need to feel less alone in their pain. That's music for people who've been counted out, beaten down, told they don't matter. That's truth so raw, it hurts. And if you start trying to make it radio friendly, if you start adding hooks, just to get spins, you'll lose that. You'll lose the thing that makes you special, the thing that makes you necessary." He paused, making sure DMX was really hearing him. "You don't need hooks. You need to stay exactly who you are, because what you are is rare, and I was wrong to tell you to change it. I was thinking about commerce, when I should have been thinking about art. I was thinking about units moved, when I should have been thinking about souls touched. You reminded me why this matters, why we do this." Irv spoke up from the mixing board, his voice careful. "So we're keeping it like this, no hook, no restructuring. Keep it exactly like this," Jay-Z said firmly. "This is the single. Release it as is. Radio's not gonna play it." Lior interjected, his businessman brain already calculating the financial implications. "Program directors are gonna be scared of it. It's too aggressive, too raw. We might be throwing away potential platinum sales. Fuck radio," Jay-Z said, echoing DMX's earlier words with the same conviction. "This is bigger than radio. This is bigger than sales figures. This is gonna be a moment. Trust. Sometimes you have to believe in the art more than the commerce. Sometimes you have to take a risk. And this," he gestured at the booth, at where DMX had just recorded, "this is worth the risk." He was right, more right than even he knew in that moment. Ruff Ryders Anthem, released as the second single from its Dark and Hell is Hot, in May 9, radio stations didn't know what to do with it at first. It was too aggressive for hot AC formats, too raw for crossover program, too different from everything else dominating the airwaves. The shiny suit era of Puff Daddy, the pop rap of Will Smith, the smooth commercial sound that had taken over after the violent deaths of Biggie and Tupac, made labels nervous about promoting anything too strict. Program directors worried it would scare their audiences, worried parents would complain, worried it was too violent, too intense, too real, worried it wouldn't fit between the other songs in their rotation. Some stations refused to play it at all. But something happened that the industry hadn't calculated, something that spreadsheets and focus groups couldn't predict. The streets claimed it immediately, not just hip-hop heads. Everyone, people who'd been waiting for something real, something that didn't sound like everything else, something that felt dangerous and authentic and alive. Kids in schools across America started barking at each other in hallways. Teenagers learned every word and performed it in cars and bedrooms and parties. The chant, "Stop, drop, shut 'em down,"
Open Up Shop became an anthem, not because it was designed to be catchy, but because it captured a feeling, the feeling of taking over, of refusing to be of being counted out your whole life, and finally having your moment. To show everyone they were wrong about you. The barking, the thing that was supposed to be too weird for mainstream audiences, became DMX's signature, his calling card, his brand. Kids barked in school cafeterias, crowds at concerts barked back at him in call and response that felt tribal, primal, like humans remembering something ancient about communication that existed before language. It became a language of its own, a way for people to communicate, that they understood what DMX represented, the part of themselves that was raw and damaged and refused to be civilized or tamed or made acceptable for polite society.
It's Dark and Hell is Hot, released on May 19, 1998, debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, sold 251,000 copies in its first week, numbers that shocked everyone, including Def Jam. Went quadruple platinum within 8 months. But more than the numbers, more than the commercial success that proved Jay-Z and the doubters wrong, it changed the conversation about what rap could be. It proved that you didn't have to follow the formula, that authenticity could compete with polish, that pain and rage properly channeled could connect with millions of people who didn't care about hooks or structure or radio-friendly packaging. They just wanted truth, and Jay-Z watched it happen. Watched DMX become a phenomenon. Watched him tour to sold-out crowd. Watched fans lose their minds with an intensity that felt religious. Watched him release a second album. That same year, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, and watched that debut at #1 too, making DMX the first rapper in history to have 2 #1 albums in the same calendar year. Watched him become the biggest new rapper since Biggie and Tupac died. Watched him do it all without compromising an inch, without adding hooks, without playing the game, without following anyone's advice including Jay-Z. Years later, during a 2003 interview on Hot 97, Angie Martinez asked Jay-Z about that moment in the studio, about the advice he'd given DMX and how spectacularly wrong it had turned out to be. "I told him he needed hooks," Jay-Z said, laughing at himself with genuine amusement rather than defensiveness. "I told him he needed to be more radio-friendly, more structured, more commercial, and he went in the booth and showed me I was completely wrong. That moment taught me something important that I carry with me to this day. There's no one way to do this. What works for me doesn't work for everyone." X's power was what he was uncompromising, and if he'd listened to me, if he'd tried to be more like me, he would have lost the thing that made him X. He would have become another rapper chasing radio spins instead of being the voice that people who were hurting desperately needed to hear. Angie asked, genuinely curious, "Did it hurt your ego, being wrong in front of everyone? Having to admit it?" "Nah. It helped my ego, because it reminded me I don't know everything. Reminded me that music isn't science. You can't formula, you can't reduce it to calculations and market research." X was a punk rocker in a rapper's body. You don't tell punk rockers to add hooks. You don't tell them to be more commercial. You let them be punk rockers. You let them be dangerous and raw and real, because that's what makes them mad.